Hey guys, how's it going? Just getting out the grocery store. Just finished another shift at work. Whew. I'm over Christmas, man. I'm over it. Like, this Christmas sucks. This is the worst Christmas, without a doubt. Like, this goes down in the record books for sure. We're just a warehouse. Like, there's no customers. There's no. And I really realized how bad it was right now when, like, I've got every so often, like, a little kid will go by the store, right? I'm handing an order off to somebody and some little kid will walk by the store, and it really makes me realize, like, man, yeah, I haven't interacted with a kid in months, you know? And you can see they're disappointed that they can't go in, and you can see that, and the job is just packaging. That's all it is. You know, we're just doing what we have to do to make sure that our owners are wealthy, which is what the job is, what all jobs are now. And I'm really struggling these days with this channel and with what I'm doing, because I'm really concerned that I'm just going to end up old and bitter, you know? And I can feel the bitterness seeping in. I can feel the anger kind of settling into who I am and in my core. And I try very hard to find outlets and find ways to alleviate that. But I worry that, especially as I get older and things start to creak and move and all of that, you know, as I start to decay, as is the way, that it's going to be something I don't know if I can avoid. Because it's very clear and obvious, like, at this stage in the game, like, huge segments of the populace are being abandoned. Huge segments of the populace are being sacrificed to corporate power. And one of the things I'm going to kind of look forward to, honestly, like, these conservative voters, right? These delusional boomers who are completely detached from what's going on in reality, or who are completely happy with the wage slave system that they are benefiting from. Like, these people get abandoned into these long-term care homes, right? Like, that's what's going to happen to them. And it's only when they're finally abandoned in these long-term care homes that they're going to start to realize, like, hey, why are these... I can't believe the conditions of these places. Meanwhile, leftists are going to be like, yeah, we've been telling you the whole time. You voted for these people, right? Like, and we're just going to smirk at these morons and just continue making their lattes while they wallow, completely abandoned by everyone, because that's what they've done to everyone else. And it's like, that's the thing to look forward to, I guess. This sort of, like, obvious comeuppance that's coming for these people who are actively working towards their own destruction. But that really makes me quite sad to think about. That, like, as our society moves forward, like, we're not going to do anything to try and rectify any of these problems, right? We're not a very serious people. We're very gullible. We're very stupid. We can be easily taken in. And we think that these sorts of problems will simply are simply a matter of, like, individual issues, which is completely a strategy by the sociopath class. Individualism. I'm being barked at by a tiny little dog. It's hard to be angry when you're being barked at by a tiny little dog, I tell you what. And that's the thing that I think I'm working on for myself, and I hope everyone else is working on for themselves, which is, how do we deal with the anger and the rage and the abandonment, as well as sort of the coming abandonments. Like, it is going to get worse, right? Like, that's the thing that's very difficult to acknowledge and pay attention to is that it is going to get worse, and that an entire generation of people, the boomers, are just not going to give a fuck at all. Like, they're not going to care at all. We're really in a position where we really do need to wait for these people to die before something serious can actually dramatically change, because there's such a large voting block of parasites that just suck away everything from the system, who had their dicks jerked their entire lives and want to continue that, so they're willing to sacrifice the lives of their own children to do it, right? Their own parents went and sacrificed their lives in war for future generations, and they'll be goddamned if they return the favor. So, like, without a doubt, like, the boomers are going to go down as one of the most reprehensible generations in maybe the history of mankind, right? We're going to be working our asses off to clean up the messes that they refused to do anything about, or even continue to perpetrate for themselves. And the reality is like, the response from the boomers to social media and the internet has been like, oh, it's a bad thing because it's increasing anxiety, it's increasing worry. Yeah, people who are knowledgeable about subjects and who understand what's going on in the world are generally anxious because they see what's happening. Whereas boomers who are delusional, just getting force-fed CNN and Fox News, who don't know anything and are stupid and are that special kind of arrogant who believe that they know something but are actually illiterate morons who have been completely propagandized, who will actually buy in when somebody says communism is bad. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, I've never met a millennial, even the most like rural, rustic, conservative type, who is willing to like double down on the anti-communist propaganda the way that a boomer is, right? This has turned into a real generational thing, and I actually really hate that, I really do. I don't like shitting on the boomers, but I'm frustrated. I am. Like, this generation was a beneficiary of like major union movements and major union stuff. And then when the time came for them to continue that energy and continue sending that down towards their own children, they completely bailed. They completely bailed, bought into the corporate lie, and then have the fucking audacity and gall to turn around and try to give us advice. Like, their parents actually did something for them, right? Like, their parents actually did something for them. And then they turn around and vote conservative, and then wonder why we're so mad at them. Like, and it's really obvious what's going to happen to these guys. Right? Like, they're going to turn 70, right? They're going to turn 80. They're going to get shoved into these long-term care homes, and not because the millennials or the Gen Xers or the Gen Z or any of these generations are sitting there being like, yeah, fuck you, but because we're going to be working our asses off, right? We're going to be working our asses off while we're working in tiny little apartments that take most of our rent, most of our wages, right? That's what's going to happen. We're not going to have the time to take care of the elderly. We're not going to have the time to do any of that. So they're just going to end up jammed in these long-term care homes that are infested with bugs and dirty, and where there's not even close to enough staff, so that a sociopath like Doug Ford can make a penny off of it. That's what is going to happen. And we're obviously not going to do anything about it. We're far too gullible and stupid for that. Like, Canadians are just blisteringly dumb. We'll buy any line. Like, if it comes out of CTV, or if it comes out of Global News, if it comes out of Globe and Mail, like, we'll just buy it. We're just push all those chips 100% in. Yeah, well, that must be the truth. That must be what's happening. Like, we're very, very, very gullible. And so, like, how do we deal with this? How do we deal with this? How do we deal with the incredible stupidity of the general populace? How do we deal with all the stuff that's going on, right? How do we just continue living our lives and try to be genial with one another and try not to be angry about it? And it's hard. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be difficult to not be very upset about what's going on in the world around us, because it's completely preventable. I think that's the hardest part. I think that is the hardest part for me. It's definitely the hardest part. Is that it's completely preventable. Like, obviously we weren't interested in doing anything to prevent it when we should have, which is about 20 years ago. Like, that's obvious. But and now it's 20 years later, right? The former teenagers who were millennials, the former millennial teenagers, who when they were teenagers were saying, "Hey, we should do stuff about this," and then we're told, "Yeah, okay, well, yeah, sure, yeah, and we just pushed it down the can, and now it's just become obvious. Like, nope, nothing's gonna happen. They're gonna raise the price of carbon by $5 a ton. It's like completely meaningless. It's so the most obvious pandering thing that only gullible idiots think is actually doing anything. And so, like, it's not, and because we have to wait for this voter bloc, these delusional boomers to actually die before we'll actually have enough power to move the vote anywhere. Like, it's not going to be another 20-30 years until we are actually in a place where something might actually be done, and by then we're going to be dealing with, like, some pretty major consequences, right? We're going to be dealing with some pretty massive blowback from our total inaction and our gullibility in our political establishment. Like, listening at all, in my view, to these conservatives and these liberals is just you gotta just be the stupidest person to actually take anything they say seriously anymore. And yet, here we are. They've got the largest, the most amount of people are still voting conservative and liberal for some reason. When you take a look at what's going on in other Western nations, like you take a look at what's going on in Europe, and they've already destroyed their conservatives and their liberals because they understand, right? Because they're a more mature and more educated set of nations, right? Like, with the exception of the one we hear the most about, which is this kind of worthless little island called England, like, which is pointless. Like, it's nothing. They have no resources. They have nothing, right? They're just sort of our cultural inheritor. Like, we're connected to them culturally in a way, but, like, we don't hear much about what's going on in Portugal or Spain, right? We don't hear much about what's going on in Germany. We don't hear much about what's going on in France, right? And there are reasons for that. There's reasons why we're culturally illiterate when it comes to these other nations, because they've actually turned against their conservatives and liberals the way that we absolutely should. But we're not going to. And so my question is steadily just becoming, like, what do we do? Like, what do we actually... Those of us who see what's about to happen and acknowledge the absolute hellstorm that we are unleashing on ourselves and on future generations, what do we do? How do we avoid falling into our own kind of personal entropy, to our own little pits of despair? And I think just talking about it, and just being honest about it, and just not being deluded, that helps me a lot. I feel actually already better having talked about this. Okay, this is the end of me, guys. If you're watching this on Instagram, I'm on YouTube. Like, share, subscribe, do all the bings, do all the dings, do all the stuff. It is always like this. It is always this dark. But we have to speak truth. All right. Good luck.